In the heart of what is now known as Virginia, a story unfolded 4 centuries ago. It's a tale of shifting loyalties, of cultural collisions, and of a man torn between two worlds. That man was Paquiquineo, a figure who looms large in the annals of American colonial history. Born into the Paspahegh tribe around 1550, Paquiqueneo's life would take an unexpected turn when Spanish Jesuits arrived on the shores of his homeland. The Spaniards, in their zeal to convert the indigenous population to Christianity, took Paquiquineo and other several young boys back to Spain. In Spain, Paquiquineo spent a decade absorbing the ways of the Europeans. He learned their languages, their religion, their customs. He was baptized and given a new name, Don Luis del Velasco, but he never forgot his roots, his people, his homeland. In 1570, after years in Spain, Paquiquineo returned to his homeland, but he was not alone. Accompanying him were Jesuit priests, eager to establish a mission in the New World. They saw Paquiquineo as their guide, their interpreter, their bridge to the Native Americans. But things didn't go as planned. Just a few months after their arrival, Paquiquineo disappeared. The priests waited for his return, their situation growing more desperate as food supplies dwindled. When Paquiquineo finally returned, he was not alone. Armed warriors from his tribe were with him. The ensuing attack was swift and deadly. The Jesuits didn't stand a chance. The mission was destroyed, the priests killed. Paquiquineo had turned against the men who had hoped to use him as a tool for their religious colonization. But why? What drove this man, who had lived among the Europeans, who had adopted their religion and their customs, to such violence? To understand Paquiqueneo's actions, we must first understand his world. He was born into a society with its own rich history, traditions, and spiritual beliefs. The arrival of the Europeans threatened to upend that world. The Jesuits' mission was not just to spread Christianity, but to reshape the native culture in their own image. In Spain, Paquiquineo had seen firsthand the power of the Europeans, their weapons, their ships, their numbers. He had seen how they could subjugate and control. He had also seen how they used religion as a tool for domination. The mission was not just a threat to his tribe, but to all the indigenous tribes of the region. Seen in this light, Paquiqueneo's actions take on a different tone. He was not just a traitor who turned against the Jesuits. He was a man fighting for his people's survival, for their right to maintain their own culture, their own beliefs, their own identity. He was a man who understood the threat posed by the Europeans and took decisive action to neutralize it. The destruction of the Spanish mission sent a clear message to the Europeans. The indigenous tribes were not passive entities to be molded to their whims. They were a people ready to defend their land and their way of life. In the wake of the attack, Spanish colonization efforts in the region stalled. Fear of further reprisals and the harsh conditions of the New World made many reconsider their plans. The brave actions of Paquiquineo and his people had bought them some time. For a time, Paquiqueneo's people and many other tribes in the region were able to continue their lives without the shadow of European colonization looming over them. But this respite was not to last. In the following decades, more Europeans arrived on the shores of the New World. The English, the French, the Dutch, each brought with them their own ambitions for wealth and expansion. The native tribes found themselves increasingly encroached upon, their lands taken, their cultures dismissed. Despite the increasing pressures, the tribes did not simply give in. They resisted, they fought, they negotiated, they adapted and found ways to survive, to maintain their cultures in the face of overwhelming odds. And in every act of resistance, every act of survival, we can see echoes of Paquiqueneo's defiance. Today, as we look back on the story of Paquiquineo, we are faced with a question: was he a traitor or a freedom fighter? To the Jesuits who accompanied him to the New World, he was undoubtedly a traitor, a man who turned against them, who led an attack that resulted in their deaths. But to his people, to the Paspahegh tribe and the other indigenous tribes of the region, he was a defender, a man who stood up against a powerful and alien force that threatened their way of life. In the end, perhaps the labels of traitor or freedom fighter are too simplistic, too limiting. Paquiquineo was a man of two worlds, caught in a time of great change and conflict. His actions were driven by a deep understanding of the threats his people faced and a fierce determination to protect them. As we consider the legacy of Paquiquineo, let us remember not just the man, but the world in which he lived, a world of complex cultural interactions, of clashing ambitions, of survival and resistance, a world that continues to shape our own. And so, we leave you with the story of Paquiquineo, a story that is much about the past as it is about the present and the future, a story that continues to resonate, reminding us of the power of resistance, the importance of cultural preservation, and the enduring spirit of humanity.